morning to everybody. We will just meet Simone Rebaudengo somewhere in the world. Ciao Simone, nice to meet you.
Hi, ciao. Hello, everyone.
Yeah. How are you?
Oh, great, great. I'm connecting from Belgrade.
Ah, still there. So because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we just met a few months ago, when I just invited you to my third year class in the communication design course. And you were already in Belgrade, and so you're still there, not moving anymore for a
No, no,
while.
no. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm based here, and so our studio is based in. So basically, I run with a couple of good people a studio called Oyo, which is based in London and in Belgrade.
Okay, so you're expanding a bit more
We're
than.
expanding. Yeah, it's like it's a micro multinational.
Yeah. No, this is interesting because somehow also it's consistent to your vision of doing design practice and design as a job, a daily job. So it's not only based in a specific place, but moving, using a new platform, to communicate and share and so on. No? So I think that we will have to discuss a bit also that. But firstly, sorry, I just would like to shortly introduce you because Simone is a product and interaction designer that worked and still works nowadays with international clients and institutions like BMW, Philips, Google Creative Labs, and the Dubai Museum of Future. That is something that we also will talk about. And his work focused on building experiential version of the future and exploring the implication of living and interacting with networked, smart, and autonomous things. So it's really something. I mean, your work is really affects and refers to different area of design, but there is something really constant, that is the word future. So it's right. I mean, you always look to the future from different point of view.
Yeah, yeah. I would say I kind of because I studied product design in Italy, like now long time ago, and then I moved into the, let's say, interaction design, so everything with technology. But I always had this. Actually, my problem is that when I started studying product design, it was like in 2007, six, and sustainability, and especially in Torino, that we had a lot of talks about how design is kind of needs to be part of circular systems. And I remember my first professor said, the most sustainable product you ever design is the one that will never be produced. And so then I was okay, then maybe then I can do products that don't exist. And so I was always interested in this idea of design as a way to communicate visions and point of views of things that have to happen, even though every product in a way every product we design is about the future because it doesn't exist and it's going to exist in a while. But I always like to kind of look a little bit ahead, like this sort of like near future, and using products and using design as a way to open up discussions about society, technology, culture. So I'm kind of I always been interested in what's next, and also try to figure out in a way when you have to bring the future down to a product, it's a very interesting process because people talk about the future in a very abstract way or in a very bird's eye view. Like we have vision of smart cities, of future cities. We have fiction, sci-fi, and then when what I'm interested in is like what is the reality of that future? What is the how do you do breakfast? How what do you listen to? How people pay? All the questions that we try to solve in the present, but in a kind of in a future context, which is kind of the same process, but it's just you have to add a sort of speculation or a kind of extrapolation of the, what's going to happen. But then the process is the same, because you have to be very, I mean, I like to be extremely detailed and extremely practical then when you design products for the future, because, I like things that work. I don't like, things that are just conceptual. So if I design something for, 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 15, or, now, as I said, Museum of the Future, we are designing with an horizon of 50 years. And it's like,
Yeah, totally.
yeah, so
Something totally, I mean, amazing. Yeah, you also introduce another term that is the one of speculative speculation, and you also said, I mean, that now with the Future Museum in Dubai, you're working on a project that looks for 50 years and ahead, and that is really half century, so really difficult to imagine how it could work in 50 years, just considering how fast technological and cultural changes and evolution we assisted and participated in the last 70 years.
yeah.
Or 30 years. I mean, the world totally changed. And another thing is just thinking about the last, well, almost a year and a half that really changed all our lives.
Everything.
Yeah, and I was looking on one of your websites that just 6 years ago you designed this unmask, this
Yeah.
this that's it looked at maybe at that time just like a provocation, a speculative design experiment, but looking now to this project, maybe you anticipated something, no?
No, yes. So, I mean, just to put it in context, like 6 years ago, because I used to live in Shanghai,
Yeah, right.
and when I moved there, I think it was one of the time where pollution was a problem that was not yet somehow recognized. And I remember like the government was talking about fog, and I remember I went, and it's the first time where I had this like mass image and impact of a lot of people wearing masks in the city. And when you walk in a city, I mean, now we all know it, but back then for me it was kind of impactful. And you have this situation where you kind of half of the face is covered, and that changes your perception of a public space, because when you walk around in the city, you see people that are angry, happy, talking, but when you have a mask, you don't see anything. So it's kind of like you lose the humanity, the perception of other people. And so basically I designed this mask with little sensors inside that would recognize whether you were smiling or making a few facial expressions. And I basically put a very simple LED matrix in front that was making an emoji. So if you were smiling, it would smile. And and it was interesting in the context because across Asia, people use masks for different reasons. And so I kind of built it and went around China, in Japan, and I had people trying it, and I was walking around the street with it, and try to create some sort of reaction. Also, some company wanted to build it for real, and then I was no, this is just a sort of like an experiment. But then now when everything happened, it's actually bittersweet, because a lot of people told me, "Oh my God, man, you made that project long time ago. You saw the futures." I know, actually, I hate that this happened, because that's also the thing that I find funny. Sometimes when you try to do this kind of projects that try to, speculate or look at the future maybe in a bit more critical way, if that happens, is actually really bad. So I wasn't happy at all. Like, it's like, rather than, oh my God, yeah, I saw the future. Like, no, I really didn't want that to happen. And then it happened, and I was okay, damn, maybe I shouldn't have done it. But that's also the thing, like what you said about, looking at the future and looking at, the sort of world of speculative design and speculation. It's not necessarily about predicting anything, because we cannot predict. I mean, that's the point. design or kind of, future thinking foresight will never predict the future, but what you're doing is kind of creating, I'd say, like a gradient of possibilities that might or might not happen, that allows us to discuss, kind of anticipate the discussion. If we will all have masks, or if we will all, I don't know, live together with, I don't know, sentient, humanoid robots, what will happen? And then as you go through that process of designing and, building that world, building that scenario, building the objects in them, you will figure out what are the problems, what are the issues, what are the implications. And that will allow us to then, have a discussion about it, rather than, put this in the real world and then figure out the implication later. So it's a process of sort of like discussion, or kind of creating a discussion, creating also imagination, because, the other thing that I like to do, and I think this type of work, whether it's, design fiction or however we want to call it, is that we open up the possibility of what the future might be, because especially when you work with companies, there is a very linear vision of what the future might be. And, especially, talking, for instance, the car industry, like, there is one line, and it's like, we're going to go self-driving. And, of course, okay, that's going to happen. But, what are all the other things will happen in that scenario? Like, who will get a fine? Can a kid drive by himself? And then if so, then do you need a license? There are all these questions that will happen, which will create the world around it. And maybe even there is a trajectory in which that might not be the only thing that happens. Like, we might have self-driving cars, but also something else. So it's about opening up a bit this sort of very linear and binary discussion about the future. Especially when you look at culture and fiction, the future is either really bad, it's like dystopian, and all the horrible kind of world technology take over, or it's extremely positive and extremely, we're going to solve everything, life is going to be amazing. For me, the reality is actually, the reality of the future is all the gradient in between. So all the things that might go bad but not so bad, and might go well but not so well. So that's why I always like to talk about real fictions, because it's about, future people will have future problems too, and they will be annoyed about, the future problems in a very real way. So it's kind of about bringing that fiction to playing with this real and fiction, future and present. That's kind of what I really like to do.
I mean, observing your work and listening to your words again now convince me that the speculative approach could be always a good exercise, both in the academic or in teaching, or as well as also in the industry or in the everyday design practice. And what you talk about is really affects to the what if approach. So just try to imagine the possible evolution or possible needs that we could have in the near or in a far future, but it's also and it's also freely from some, especially if we apply that into the industry, is also an approach that is freely from just mere economical or strategic. I guess. I mean, I can imagine somehow, or not.
Well, I mean, I don't know. That's what I kind of like to. I mean, kindly disagree on some way, because it's, for me, I mean, I really don't care about speculative design as a process or something that you should do or teach. I mean, well, you can teach an approach, as in like you can show people how to work on this, but for me it's not really a process that is different from design. It's more about a philosophy as a designer that you have, which which drives your kind of vision, how you work with institutions, how you work with companies. Like when we work, because that's where I've been doing a lot of work in the sort of that mixed space of conceptual design that goes into gallery, and that is really like, let's say, it's very close to academia. Like you make a project, it's been shown, maybe there is a paper, people discuss it, it goes on a blog, and it lives in that sort of non-real space, right? It's more it's content. But what I'm trying to do, and also that's why we started the studio Oyo, it's like, how do we bring that approach of having like a very a strong point of view about what we think about technology, but working with real clients, working with real technology, working with real companies, because that's kind of where you then make the difference. Like if you have this sort of way of thinking about the technology and you have a bit of a critical, I don't want to say, I think that's the problem in English. When you say critical, it's negative, but in Italian, when you say, when you critique something, it's more about having a discussion about it. So when you have that sort of like optimist critical approach, then you can actually design technology different, right? We don't need to have everything talking in our houses. And that's why when we work with artificial intelligence technology or companies that do that, we try to, give a separate path. And we say, well, yes, everyone is going to have Alexa or everyone is going to have Google Home, but is that the only way, for instance, that intelligence need to be designed in the life of people? And that's sort of like, that's how we bring that philosophy of being kind of questioning and, the what if, the questioning, but in the reality. So I think that's much stronger because I don't know, I felt, because I worked for a long time in, like I work for Frog Design and I work in the consulting, sort of design consulting world. And I felt that in some way as a designer or even as a design company, you lose sometimes the, your philosophy or your vision, because at the end it's really kind of client focused. But I think there is a middle ground in which you can still be stubborn and push for different, evolution of what a technology might become. So I think that's what we're trying to do. It's like I would say we are speculative and playful as a philosophy, but neither as a process or as an output. And I think that's kind of the mix that I'm trying to bring. It's like, how do we make again that sort of design with a philosophy, with a purpose that maybe, now I'm going to say, but, some of the designers of Italian history had that, they used products as a way to talk about, common society. Yeah. And they were products that were produced. So they were real things that were not art pieces. And then now what I felt is that if I want to do conceptual work, it just lives in the conceptual realm. And then if I want to work with companies, I need to do consulting. So what we're trying to do, how do we bring that back in the world of 2020, AI, machine learning, AR? So what is the technology infused design with a vision in that used to be, what is it now, and can you do that? Is it economically viable for you as a designer to have a very strong point of view today? And I think now that's what we're doing, and that's what we're kind of trying to, and I think we're kind of succeeding in that. But that's why I don't like, for instance, to label my work or our work as speculative, because at the end it has a speculative vibe, but I don't I don't call it speculative. For me, it's all design at the end. Sorry, I went on a rant.
Yeah, you were a bit freezed for a few seconds. Okay, thanks also for clearing. I mean, I'm still curious about knowing more about using your proper approach, call whatever. I mean, future or speculative or experimental or what else into the industry sector that is really, that maybe, I mean, need also in terms of production, you know, to look always at the future, especially in some sectors like automotive or technology, high tech, as you also experienced. But there is another couple of points that I would like to discuss with you. One is about your studio organization, no? Because you just declare that your studio is made of designers, technologists, and bots, you know, working on future products and interaction. Well, what is the role, exactly the role of your bot that you call Robbie's, right? Is still Robbie or just changed?
Yeah, it's Robbie. Robbie. Yeah, no. So we when we started the studio, because a lot of the work we do is I mean, especially also my co-founder Matteo Loglio and I, we both work in this sort of, you know, the early stage of connected products, and then it became also, you know, machine learning and AI, and so we've been working a lot in the past, let's say, 4 or 5 years in that field. And so when we started the studio, we looked at how, you know, what is a studio organization of the future, and because some of the projects we've been doing, they involve a lot of you know, machine learning in the process of designing. So we call it some sort of like kind of machine co-creation, or there is actually a very nice reference to the past, which is it's called the Centaur model, and this was like when Garry Kasparov, when he lost, so the first man that lost against a computer playing chess, at a certain point against the blue, then he decided, okay, I'm gonna collaborate with a computer, and so man and computer played against man or computer, and it was like kind of this new model of like collaboration in the decision-making process. And so that, if you apply that model to design, basically, you know, what if you use, instead of automating design, instead of, you know, creating, basically what Autodesk or what, you know, Adobe will do in the future is create technology which simplifies your design process. But actually, we're interested in the opposite. Like, how do you bring in, for instance, a generative algorithm or a bot in a process to make it harder, to make it more, you know, to bring you to places where you don't know? And that's why we somehow hired, I mean, we kind of created him, but we also hired Robbie as the first, I mean, we call him an AI creative director, because he's a bot, he has a bunch of functions. He lives in our Discord channel, but also he has an Instagram feed, so he generates his own sort of, you know, inspiration quotes. And also, like, I mean, it's not really him, but we create code and technology to generate products, to somehow use, you know, this sort of 2D generation and then bringing it to 3D to make products that otherwise we wouldn't be able to do. And we tried this process a few times. We worked with a project that is still not out, but together with Itala, which is a very old glass design company, where we basically took all the history of the company and, you know, train Robbie to kind of generate new glass shapes, and then figure out in this process, like, how do we play with this new material? Because basically when you do this process, you're basically brainstorming with a machine. So, you know, rather than you coming up with, you know, a sketch, you basically get this infinite crazy generation of things, and you're somehow brainstorming ideas, and then you curate what the machine does, and you somehow select, then you change it again. So it's a very new, we try to call it some sort of like artisanal intelligence, because we're trying to bring back this human and sort of craft into the world of you know, designing with artificial intelligence. And that's why Robbie is kind of the, you know, the person, the bot, I don't know how we call him yet, but is the image of this for us. That basically we think that rather than saying there are going to be automated design studios, so design will be automated and we will not have a job, we actually hire him, so he's going to be happy with us, and so he's not going to take our job. That's our philosophy.
Okay, so he's effectively a member of the studio, an active member of the studio. Okay.
He's an active, very active member of the studio.
Yeah, I mean, I also like the idea, of this, as you define, the artisanal intelligence. So to use and to think of a bot as an artisanal intelligence, but the term artisanal and also a craftsman, and I think that really affects to your practice also in the previous years, in previous experience, also this constant use of prototyping and making smart object and objects at all, of course, you studied also for product design, but what I think about that is also that in your projects, in your process, and in your experience, there is always cross-cultural, or I like to use the antidisciplinary definition. So in most of your project, you really care of different aspects of design. It's not just product, it's not just interaction, it's not just prototyping, it's not just communication design. So you look to every field of design. It's not only coding, So and I start to think that we are going in a direction where designer needs some competencies, needs some specific knowledge, but they have to approach to the practice in a wide way, like a total designer somehow. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, because I think especially in the world of design like the industry of design really drives you to be vertical. And I remember when I was working as an interaction designer, I was only doing screens, and but I come from product design. I also want to do physical interface, as I know that's product design. So in somehow like this hybridness it works well in like a small scale. Where you have many people that do many different things and you can combine them. Like a large organization, it becomes really hard to work with this hybrid. But for me, I think it's impossible to design. It's kind of the same thing as like, in order, when you had to design a chair in whatever material, you need to know how the material works. If it's wood or if it's plastic or whatever it is, you need to know how it bends, if it bends. And if you want to work with technology, you want to work with connected products, with artificial intelligence, you need to know the material. Like, you don't have to be an expert. You don't need to, know how to code an entire machine learning model, but you need to know what are the kinks, what can I flex, what can I expand. If you don't know that, you cannot design for it. So at the end of the day, with everything, for me, it's about knowing enough and playing with it, so I know what the material that I'm working on can do, and I know how to talk to people that can help me produce it. Once you used to be the guy that works in the machine, and designers used to go there and say, well, I know that you cannot press it like that, but if we change a bit the force or the temperature, maybe we can get what I have in mind. And for me, it's the same. If I would need to talk to a developer and I want to make a particular intelligence for that product, I need to know how to tell him and how to do it, and I need to know, what is the machinery and what is the, how to hack the system. And so that's why I'm saying, like, every time, not every designer needs to know how to code or how to do whatever, but you need to know enough to know how to, tweak it. So it's all about materials. I think for me, all these things are materials, and it's the same sort of approach.
Okay, grazie, Simone. Thanks, Simone. We have to
Thank you very much.
To
It's a
close,
pleasure.
I mean, we need to still have other occasion to meet each other, because I really
Of course.
becoming more and more interested in your way of thinking, your philosophy, as you said. So thanks a lot. I mean, well, many things.